Good afternoon, and thank you, Ellen. I appreciate the invitation to always come and speak to you. I've got kind of a tough act to follow. I see there's about half the crowd in here that there was next door. I can't say I've ever followed Miss America before. I followed Mike Dwyer a couple times, but somehow that's not the same. So. Whoops. I screwed up here.
Push back.
Back, okay. Now we'll go. Whoops, now I did it again. Okay, all right, we're good. All right, some of these technological challenges that befuddle us sometimes. So what I want to talk to you today is to kind of give you an overview of the state of the water here in North Dakota. I'm going to deviate maybe from a traditional state of the water talk. A lot of the things that I would maybe talk about, different water projects going on around the state, have specific items on the agenda. So rather than let those individuals talk about those topics, what I would like to talk to you today about is just some of the activities that are going on with the State Water Commission. We've got a busy year. I thought after legislation got over with that things would slow down a little bit, but I think they've actually picked up, so it's been kind of a crazy few months here. The film footage that you're seeing here on the screen is actually some footage that we shot with our drone. This past year we acquired a drone. Steve Best over here came out. He got licensed to fly the thing, and he's been doing a lot of work for us with that drone, and it's been a great asset for the State Water Commission in terms of allowing us to see things that maybe we couldn't see before, particularly if you're doing sovereign land investigations or you're looking at dam inspections or construction sites or whatever. It's great to be able to get that eye up in the sky and get that kind of film footage. So Steve's been enjoying flying that thing around the state. I don't think we've crashed yet, so that's a good thing. But that's some of the capabilities that we're trying to embrace in new technologies. So what I like to start out with is just kind of a review of the water year. Water years run from October 1st through September 30th. So let's roll the clock back to fall of 2016. If you remember October, November, they were beautiful months. November in particular was really a nice month for here in North Dakota. And I told my wife, see, this is like what it's like every year. And that's the only way I could get her to move up here. Yeah, she always wanted to think about going south. But so, and then, Thanksgiving weekend hit. And the first major storm system of the year rolled into North Dakota. Bismarck here got 22 inches of snow, much of the central part of the state and across the north. We got anywhere from 18 to 20 inches of snow. This is really the first major snowstorm of the year, but they just kind of seemed to roll after that. By the first week of January, we had about 74 inches of snow on the ground here in Bismarck. We were on our way to breaking the all-time record of 101 inches of snow that was set in 1997. And, the National Weather Service, as it got into January, was talking about making their flood predictions and the likelihood of major flooding on all the river basins. There was some discussion about the likelihood that Devil's Lake is going to come up 3 to 4 feet. And all these predictions about how much runoff and potential flooding we're going to be having come spring. And then something happened. Somebody flipped the switch and got into February. And February was actually really pretty mild. And, we had a lot of snowpack settle. We got into March when typically the thaw occurs. And March was really an ideal spring for a month for snowmelt. We had temperatures that during the day would get up into the 40s, 30s, get above thawing. Nighttime they'd drop back down and get freezing, and really extended that whole snowmelt over a period of several weeks, and helped tremendously in terms of just preventing and minimizing the flooding that was going on. I remember that time we still had the DAPL camp down on the Cannonball River, and we were trying to get them out of there because we were projecting that they're sitting down in the floodplain, they're going to be flooded. We need to get in there and get that place cleaned up before the floods hit. and all kinds of predictions about how significant a potential flooding we've got going on. And it never really materialized. We had some flooding on the lower sewers. We had some flooding on in the northern Red River Valley, but for the most part, all the flooding that they were predicting never really materialized, and much of that was due to the fact that with that slow melt we got, much of that moisture actually just soaked into the ground. As quickly as winter hit in November, the ground never really froze at all, so it could absorb a tremendous amount of water that came off of that snowpack. So that was a good thing. As we moved farther into spring, got into April and May, things really started turning dry, and I was amazed at how quickly things dried out. Back in the spring we had a lot of wind, and it was just, with all the snowpack we had, we dried out extremely quickly, and we got into May, and it was apparent that we're kind of dry and need moisture. We move into June, and we can see, some significant drought starting to develop. And we get into July, and it's apparent that, we've got a serious drought going on here. The western Southwest and western North Dakota was hit the hardest by this drought. If you looked on a national map, eastern Montana was a part of that too, and there was just a big blob up there in north central United States that was under some really pretty significant drought at that time. So that was a serious drought. We heard people talk about the fact it hadn't been this dry since the 1930s, and it was in fact a major impacts to the state. As we got into August, we started getting some rain and saw a little relief from that drought. Bismarck here, we got a little over 5 inches of rain, and it was, things started to green up a little bit, and we saw some of the drought conditions starting to roll back a little bit. But then as we continued into fall, we saw continued improvement in the drought conditions, but it's dry out there. With the exception of that moisture we got in August, September, October, November here, really been pretty dry. And, so we need some moisture this winter, hopefully some spring rains to kind of replenish that topsoil and groundwater across the state. So we're by no means out of the woods. With the drought, one of the impacts that the drought had was to livestock producers and their ability to provide pasture, grassland, and as well as water supplies to, for their livestock. And in June, the State Water Commission activated what's called the Drought Disaster and Livestock Water Supply Assistance Program. This is a program that provides 50% match up to $3,500 per project for the development of sustainable water supplies for livestock producers. And the producer can have 3 projects per producer. And so we rolled this out in June. I think initially we authorized $500,000 for it. We went through that in a matter of days, really, and had an emergency meeting of the commission in July, authorized another lump chunk of money, went through that really quickly, and really just, there's a lot of demand out there, a lot of need for livestock producers to develop water supplies. Counties that were eligible for this, you had to be a county that was declared a disaster area by the governor. That was most of the western 2/3 of the state. And the State Water Commission continued to allocate more money for this program as we went through that money. And to date, we've gone through about $1.325 million. We have funded about 490 projects. 430 of those have been funded. We've funded. Let me back up. We've funded 430 projects, and we've conditionally funded an additional 60 projects for about another $190,000 that we're going to ask the State Water Commission to authorize additional funding for at our meeting on Friday. So here's a map that kind of shows all of the projects that we've got across the state. You can see they're concentrated really in the southwestern part of the state. That's where the biggest need for water supplies are. But really, from about middle of the state, 2/3 of the state, the western 2/3 of the state, really, this was a great help to them. and a great benefit to those livestock producers. I know I traveled this summer with the governor and the commissioner of ag doing some drought programs around the state, and one of the things we talked about was this drought assistance program, and it was very popular among people that attended those meetings. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about budget here. Legislature met this past spring. They passed House Bill 1020. House Bill 1020 is our budget bill. They approved in there about $299 million in new funding for water development projects. They're still operating on this water bucket approach where they put water or money into specific buckets, and then the State Water Commission breaks those buckets out and provides it to specific projects. But in that bill, water supply, which is really for municipal projects and these large regional water supply projects, and there are 4 of them. There's the Southwest Pipeline, the NAS, the WAS, and Red River Valley Water Supply. So they got that bucket got 120 million. Rural water, there's 27 million in that bucket. Flood control, which 136 million, and then general water management, which is kind of the catch-all for everything else, got about 16 million. So all together we got a budget of 299 million for funding of new water projects. One of the things, I think most of you probably know that the majority of our funding comes from the oil extraction tax that is paid to the state by oil production in the Bakken. And the 20% of the oil extraction tax that's paid to the state goes into what's called the Resources Trust Fund, and that's the majority of our funding. We also have Water Development Trust Fund that the tobacco settlement dollars go into, but by and large, the bulk of our funding comes from the oil extraction tax. And with the downturn in the Bakken, we are actually seeing revenue right now coming in below where we need them to be to meet our budget. We need to average about $11.3 million a month in order to meet our budget, and we've been tracking below that. You can see here the months there. The blue column is what we need, and the green column is what we've actually been getting. And so at this point, we're about $5.1 million short of where we need to be for the biennium. Now the good news is we're trending in the right direction here. That difference between what we need and what we're getting is getting smaller each month, and my financial, I'm going to call you an advisor, my financial consultant, my Dave Lashquich, my division director for our administrative division, who really takes care of all of our funding, takes care of the numbers for me. He's optimistic that this next month here we're going to actually break even. So we'll see if that comes true. If not, we'll come talk to Dave. So anyway, and another thing, just there's been a lot of increased activity in the Bakken, and so why aren't we seeing that reflected here in our revenues? And part of the problem is that when a new well comes on board, they actually have they don't have to pay extraction tax for the first 6 months or $4.5 million worth of revenue. So whichever one of those comes first, that's when they have to start paying their tax. So there's always a lag time between bringing a new well online and them actually starting to contribute extraction tax to the state. So I think we're going to outgrow this as time goes on. So we'll continue to monitor it and see how it progresses. A couple other things that the legislators passed this year. They also passed in House Bill 1374, requires us to develop an economic analysis of flood control and water conveyance projects. And the goal here really is to get an opportunity to see that the state of North Dakota is putting a lot of money into these different projects, and what's the benefits that are coming back to the state. And the goal here is to try to make sure that the state is getting its money's worth as it invests in all these projects. So the other thing it required to do was to develop a life cycle cost analysis for municipal water supply project here. And this was an effort to try to show communities what the true cost of a water project is. you know, you've got your design, you've got your construction, but then you've also got your operation and maintenance as well as decommissioning when the project's no longer lived its expected design life. So this will give them an idea of what the actual cost of that facility, that piece of infrastructure actually is. And we're going to start, you know, incorporating these into our decision making about funding of projects. We'll take a look at you know, each individual project and report this to the commission and consider this as we make funding decisions. So another thing that we're going to be doing is updating our state water plan, our planning and education division. Pat Frigid and his folks. Come February, we're going to start sending out letters to all the potential project sponsors across the state. So if you're a township, a county, a city, a water resource district, anyone that could potentially have a project, you're going to get a letter asking you to identify what projects you anticipate doing in the 2019-2021 biennium. So fill that out, make an estimate of what your costs are going to be, and as these responses start rolling into us, we're going to put them together into an inventory and develop a database that gives us an idea of what kind of funding needs we're going to have in the upcoming biennium. And then this summer, we're required to hold a series of commissioner-hosted meetings around the state. We go out and visit the 7 different river basins here in North Dakota and hold public meetings where the project sponsor has opportunity to meet with us one-on-one, face-to-face, and we can learn about their project, the opportunity to they may have further refined their costs. So this is opportunity. You know, we continue to gather data at these meetings and learn about their project, and then from those meetings we'll come back and put together the water plan, and that'll be ready to go come start of legislative session in 2019. So a great aid to us in terms of helping us prepare a budget, having an understanding of what financial needs are out there and what the anticipated projects are. All right. Here we go. One of the things the State Water Commission is trying to do is embrace the use of new technology. And what you're seeing here on the screen right now is some film footage from a aquifer investigation we did. This was actually in the fall of 2016. And what this is called Airborne Electromagnetic Survey. And you know, for years and years and years, the way to investigate groundwater resources is go out there with a drill rig and punch holes all the way across that aquifer. And we've been doing that for years, and we've got literally thousands of well logs from holes we've punched. You know, and you never really have the ability to punch enough holes. You can always use more data. So what these it's called the AEM, Airborne Electromagnetic Survey. What that is kind of, my appropriations staff likens it to doing a MRI of the Earth. So they take this helicopter, fly these rings, they do transects back and forth across the area that they're wanting to investigate, and they actually, this shoots magnetic waves down into the ground, measures the resistivity of the layers in the Earth, and from that we can gather this data and put together these tremendous maps that allow us to see a view of the aquifer that we have. You know, we could spend years drilling to get that much information. So, you know, here's kind of a idea of this is actually the Spiritwood aquifer here, just on the east side of Jamestown. This was the first area that we ever used this AEM process on. We flew transects back and forth across that whole section on the left there. And the interesting thing about this is that we thought we had a pretty good handle on what the Spiritwood aquifer consisted of. We thought we knew the extent of it, you know, and from this process, from this AEM process, if you notice down here that box there on the left-hand side, we discovered something we had no idea existed. You know, over here you can see that box, you know, down here. Okay, so that box is on the right here. That's the bigger version of it. And if you see this channel that kind of transects through here from what I'll call it northwest to southeast, we had no idea that existed. That's this deeper channel that was right here. That we've been doing all this drilling out there, and we had no idea it existed. So it was with great excitement, I think, that our appropriations folks discovered this and realized, just the level of detail that you can get on an aquifer utilizing this process. Now, Dave Hish, who's been our primary hydrologist working with this, is going to talk more about this tomorrow at the North Dakota Irrigation Association. So if you're interested in this, go sit in on his session, because he's going to give much more detailed report about this whole process than what I did here in a few minutes. We have also now, this was in the Spirit Aquifer east of Jamestown. This fall, we moved down to the Wahpeton Buried Valley Aquifer and the West Fargo Aquifer. We flew those here about the middle of October or so, end of October. And we're just starting to process that data down there now. But it's a tremendous use of technology that's going to give us data that we couldn't collect in a drilling for years, actually. So it's a great tool for us to help us identify water resources here in the state. We're very excited about that. Let's talk about the Missouri River a little bit. That's always since 2011, it's kind of been a quiet subject, but it's still a key element to the North Dakota water resources here in North Dakota. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that. The Corps of Engineers is projecting a runoff this year of about 29.2 million acre feet. The average is about 25.3, so we're about 4 million acre feet above average for the year. You say, well, gosh, as dry as it's been, how could that possibly be? And really, much of the runoff this year is attributable to snowpack in the mountains of western Montana. That area above Fort Peck, we've had about average snowpack up there. And then the area, what they call it, Fort Peck to Garrison Reach, which is really the Yellowstone Basin. There we actually had about 150% of snowpack. So the runoff coming out of the mountains has been just a tremendous runoff into the Missouri River Reservoir system here. I know if you were in Bismarck at all this summer, they were discharging from June through August about 33 to 35,000 CFS all summer long, when normally we'd be expecting about somewhere in that 22 to 24,000 range of discharge. So it's been a tremendous year really for runoff in the basin, considering how dry eastern Montana and the Dakotas were this year. So great for that. So that really leaves Wahi and Garrison in really pretty good shape. You can see right now that Garrison is about 1841.2 and Wahi is at about 1608.3. The way the Corps operates this, you can see that zone that they have right there called Annual Flood Control Multiple Use Zone. Come the end of February, 1st of March, the Corps of Engineers really would like to be right at the base of that zone. So that's right. They'd like to be right down here. And if they had their druthers, they would operate year in and year out just by bouncing up and down, through this zone. Now in real life that doesn't work because we have droughts and all those kind of things, and they can't maintain that. But in a perfect world, if they're at the base of that zone come 1st of March, they figure they're set. So I think we're set in really good shape. We should be right about at that level come 1st of March, and we'll see what the snowpack over the winter looks like and what kind of runoff we're going to have next year. But this year was a good year on the Missouri River. Talk a little bit about Devil's Lake. Since 1993, early 90s in there, Devil's Lake has been getting a lot of attention. A State Water Commission built a west outlet and started pumping out of Devil's Lake in 2005. In 2009, we added an east end outlet. Both of those discharged to the Cheyenne River. And this year, so what we got, 2005 to 12 years of pumping, we reached a significant milestone. We pumped our 1 millionth acre foot of water out of Devil's Lake this year. So that's a huge amount of water. In terms of what that means for the depth of the lake here, those million acre feet of water equate to about 5.5 feet of water in Devil's Lake. So This spring, we started out at about 1450 elevation on Devil's Lake. The National Weather Service, in their early predictions were saying you're going to probably get 3 to 4 foot rise with all the snowpack we've got out there. What we saw was about a 1.6, 1.7 foot rise in Devil's Lake. So we went from 1450 basically up to about 1451.5, let's call it. So had we not taken that 5 feet of water out up here, 5.5 feet of water, we would have been potentially at elevation 1457, which is 1 foot from that Devil's Lake spilling naturally. So the water we've evacuated from the lake there has had a tremendous impact on the elevation of the lake. And the other thing is that for every foot of water you take off Devil's Lake, there's about 10,000 acres of farmland that are come out of the water and can be returned to agriculture. So right now we're sitting at about 1449.6. We're going to Jeff Frith down here with Devil's Lake tells me that the lake's pretty much froze over, so we're probably going to stay at that elevation through winter, and then again we'll see what the snowpack this winter and projected runoff for next year amounts to. So a couple of projects that aren't on the agenda here. We're doing some flood control projects around the state. City of Valley City has been working on a flood control project to provide flood protection to the city there. The area you see down there in green kind of wraps around the Valley City, the college out there. That's been built. They're currently working on kind of those orange sections right now. That's some areas downtown to provide flood protection. And it really amounts to a series of flood walls and levees. Some places where they're really squeezed, they got to put in flood walls, but really you prefer to do a levee because it's quite a bit cheaper. And then the areas in blue are phases of the flood project that they'll continue to do in future years. So they're, I think, making good progress on that and providing some flood protection to the community of Valley City. Just down the road, or down the river, I should say, Cheyenne River, that is, in Lisbon. Lisbon also is working on a flood control project, and the areas in green there are areas that they've been constructing. You can see that levee D kind of on the middle on the right here. That's what they were working on this summer, and then they've got a couple other stretches of levee to build, and City of Lisbon will have good flood protection then from the Cheyenne River. That's been a community that's been prone to flooding off and on over the years if you've got high runoff into the Cheyenne. Another project that we're working on is up in Grafton. Grafton, as you know, is up in the Red River Valley, extremely flat. They get runoff coming down the Forest River, is it? Comes down here and actually enters the community up here, kind of on the northwest side, then kind of rolls through the city and exits out here to the east. And during periods of flooding, much of the community can really be flooded out. So what they're going to do is put a levee system around the community, and then way up here on the top up there, there will be an inlet that will allow a certain amount of water into the natural channel right up here, and then the rest of it's going to actually enter diversion and flow around the outside of that levee system on downstream. So that way they'll be able to handle the flows that come down the river there and provide some flood proofing for the community. Now, Governor Burgum was just up in Grafton about, I think it's been weeks ago, maybe 10 days, for a Main Street Initiative project there, and he was talking to one of the individuals, and that individual told him that he's got a house, and if I recall correctly, it's appraised for like $160,000, and he pays about $3,900 a year in flood insurance. So having a flood project like that can go a long ways towards helping individuals with their flood insurance. I think most of you are aware that we have a new commission this summer. Governor Burgum appointed new members to the State Water Commission. We have, and by legislation, they're required to come from each of the river basins. So So Mark Owen represents the Upper Missouri River. He's chairman of WAS system out there. And then Russ McDonald, he is here in Bismarck. He represents the Lower Missouri. Katie Anderson out of Jamestown represents the James River. Matt Peterson, Valley City, represents what's actually now the Upper Red River. Remember, Red River flows north, so south is the upper part of it. Michael Anderson out of Hillsboro is our commissioner for the Lower Red River. Richard Johnson, mayor up there in Devils Lake, represents the Devils Lake Basin, and then Jason Zimmerman up in Minot represents the Source River. So those are our new commissioners. They took office this summer, and we've had a couple commission meetings with them, and we'll have a commission meeting this Friday here at the Dakota. So if you have opportunity to be a part of that, I would encourage you to do that. The other thing we did is that we actually scheduled all of our commission meetings for the upcoming year here. And we're required to hold commission meetings every other month. So you can see there that we're going to have our first meeting this Friday, like I said. And then in January, we got a meeting scheduled in January. And that's going to actually be, it's a public meeting, but it's going to really be a policy meeting. We've got some policy issues that we need to visit with the commissioners about, set policy about a number of things. And so the January meeting is going to actually be a policy meeting. But everything after that is going to be regular commission meetings. So you can write those dates down, mark them on your calendar, plan to attend those meetings if you get the chance. And the other thing we're going to do is we've had a number of requests to move the commission meetings out of our commission room over in our State Water Commission building. So we're going to do that. We're going to start meeting over here at the Capitol, the west wing of the Capitol, in the Bryn Hill Hoagland room. So any of you that gets involved in legislative session knows that a lot of hearings are held in there, and it's a good room to hold commission meetings in. It's good size. It's got better video IT capabilities, so it'll be a good place to meet. So mark the dates down, put them on your calendar, plan on attending those meetings. And with that, that's it. Thank you again for the opportunity to visit with you. Appreciate that always. Enjoy talking about water and enjoy visiting one-on-one with you. If you got questions, please catch me afterwards and we can visit. Thank you.